The lesson.
Oh, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about Sheer Talent, because you dropped that in 98, but when did you actually consciously, I guess, start recording for that EP? And then tell us, once you dropped it, you know, what sort of response and what sort of feedback and what impact did that have for you?
Well, in that 90s gap that we were talking about before, I worked with a lot of different DJs and producers, and I went sort of from Frenzy to DJ Item, who's a Johnny Crates. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Massive record collector, big record dealer to a lot of overseas producers and that come here. He was my DJ for about a year or two, and we started working on a tape together. And so I actually started formulating some shit then. So as it went through from sort of 93, 94, 95, 96, I started Unkut Recordings in 97 with Robbie. So I basically had a fair few tracks already written. So we started the label to put out my album ultimately, so which was going to be called Without Further Ado. So we started the label to drop the album that year. I was recording at Prowla's at the time, so I recorded the whole Sheer Talent at the time, and just due to the means of funding, recording times, etc., it kind of didn't come out till 98 ultimately. But lyrically, it was kind of a build-up of, I got a track on there called 1992, which was actually done prior with Johnny Item in 1992. So I just kind of, I re-recorded the track, we kept all the samples and that the same, we just kind of reconstructed it, put it back together again. So, you know, that 12 EP, whatever you want to call it, came out, was a span of kind of tracks done in that sort of five years, I suppose you could say, sort of thing. So the album never came out. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. I always wanted to put out some wax, you know what I mean? It was kind of everyone wanted to do wax, particularly back then. And unfortunately, cost, the fact that there was really only one plant in Australia at the time by then, it was too hard to do. So most guys were just pumping out tapes. And I had a tape basically ready to go, a full length, and I was like, no, fuck it, let me pull it back, let's do a 12-inch, we'll take the best tracks off the album and do that, hence Sheer Talent. And rightfully or wrongfully, I don't know if that was the right decision now. I kind of wish I had just put the whole album out as a tape instead of the 112, because, you know, I mean, but I just wanted to drop the wax ultimately. Yeah, again, in hindsight, I probably wish I didn't, because I feel like I learnt so much not long after that. You learn from putting shit out, and I'd never actually put anything out. So to sort of go straight to wax, aside from a couple of demos, it was kind of pretty crazy. But you know, it is what it is. So.
And then once you put it out, how was the reception? Was it what you expected, or were you not really expecting anything, or what?
Man, I wasn't expecting anything. You know what I mean? I did it for me. I had some good mates in most of the major cities around Australia that had contacts with the store, or, you know, most of the guys that were working in the stores at the time actually were in the scene as well. So, you know, a Rocking Horse in Brisbane had hams. You know, that was kind of the case everywhere. So we kind of built a pretty good rapport, whether it was via graph or the music itself, with guys pretty much in most states. So I knew I had enough contacts to distribute them, you know, around the States. But as far as where it went, who gave a fuck? I mean, that was part of the reason why we didn't do vinyl, was because you had to pour a few G's into it with, you know, 90% chance that's gone, you know what I mean? If they don't sell, then they're coming back. But, you know, I didn't give a fuck at the time. I was like, well, you know, I just want to do it. So tapes was a cheaper option, obviously. But, yeah, we did it, and it was kind of cool. And I kind of look back now, and I still love the lyrics and I love the beats, but I think the thing you learn the most about when you're putting product out is you actually learn more about your delivery and how to record. You know, we had a primitive setup at Prowla's at the time, and my rapping style probably wasn't really suited to it, you know. But, you know, that's kind of things that you learn along the way, and I guess, yeah, without doing that, we wouldn't have moved on to the next thing. So it's cool. It was a cool thing.
So the next thing was the Amateurs EP. Now, that was 99, so that was the following year.
Correct, yeah.
So basically, once you dropped that, all the stuff that's on the Amateurs EP, did you start recording that straight after that?
Yeah, we pretty much were recording it at the same time. So the stuff on the Amateurs 12 was actually stuff for the album as well. So it just because I ended up, instead of just putting out a traditional 12 with a track or 2 tracks and a couple of intros, Sheer Talent had, I think, 4 tracks and a couple of intros and an outro and shit. So I'd kind of already taken a chunk of the album away on the first 12. So when we came to the second one, it was sort of a case of, okay, where can we mix it up? So we did a remix and we threw an a cappella on there. And again, I took out like 4/5 of the album on 2 12 inches. So in the end, it was just partly the reason why the album never came out, because it was like, by then I was kind of over it and I'd already put out a fair chunk of the album. And at the same time, Amateurs, as far as a wax release and a business release, it was just a headache and a half. So yeah, we had a lot of dramas with the pressing plan. And then, you know, when you're self-funded and you're doing for self right across the board, as far as your distribution and everything, as soon as you have some hurdles, it's a bit of a kick up the arse. But you know, I was still hungry enough to keep pushing through, so that was cool.
And the big thing I remember about that EP is you had a joint on there called I Can See Clearly Now.
Yeah.
I guess with that particular joint, is that based on a I guess a real experience or a real relationship that you once had?
Same as you, man. Yeah. It was actually quite old by the time it came out, but yeah, it was definitely based on that. You know, same scenario, first love. Yeah, and there probably wasn't too many dudes doing shit like that back then. I think that's kind of become a little bit of a something that guys will put out. You know, it was more. I think to kind of show the vulnerability side, and then show fuck you bitch at the end. You know what I mean? It was like no one had kind of done it quite like that. Well, I hadn't heard it if that was the case, and I think now more dudes are doing that sort of shit. But yeah, it was most definitely loosely, partly based on real events, which is kind of funny. And man, you said that so many people have actually come up and said the same shit. Like, that's my joint off the old Trem stuff. It's fucking, I can relate to it. I had the same scenario. And funnily enough, I didn't do it for that to be the case, but it's kind of cool that it worked out like that. You know, there's so many heads have come up since and just gone, yeah, that's, yeah, man, I fucking went through the same shit, you know? Like, is that real? Is that real? So, yeah, man, yeah. So, yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think a lot of dudes have been through that story. I mean,
Yeah.
Probably 90% of dudes I know have been through a similar.
I'd say
sort of
everyone has
scenario.
in some case, you know what I mean? So.
And you had that line in there because I used to live in Melbourne and I used to skateboard back in the day.
So you went to Priam Bowl?
And you had that line, like something to the extent of chilling in Priam Bowl,
Yeah.
scheming on some moles or something.
Yeah, and that was the spot back in the day. So back in that sort of, when are we looking? In the 90s, I'd say around that 90, 93. Earlier, probably 91, 92, 93. That was a bit of a hangout spot for sure. So I spent a lot of time there then.
Priam Bowl also had that big half pipe there.
Yeah.
You'd be familiar with Ben and Tass Pappas?
Yeah.
Did you ever meet them down there while you was hanging out there?
Yeah. I didn't skate. I had a bash, but I was fucked up at skating. But we used to drink there, and a lot of graffiti writers used to drink there as well. So, but yeah, I met those dudes. I don't know them, but I know some good skaters from there. I don't know if you know Benny Harris. You know Ben Harris?
The name definitely rings a bell.
Yeah. He's a dude I'm still mates with now. But yeah, there was a lot of good skaters come and go from that area, man. That was like I'm assuming I'm not heavily entrenched in the skate world, but you know, a lot of good dudes came from that spot for sure. It was a good spot.
The lesson. 27. Oh yeah.